What's going on YouTube and four-wheel drive fans? It's Andreas here from Symmetry 4-wheel drive. So today I wanted to do something that I've been wanting to do a bit more often with you guys, and that is opening up a forum for discussion on certain topics relating to four-wheel driving. So today's topic, I am going to be talking about something that almost everyone encounters at some point, and that is, what size tire do I choose for my four-wheel drive vehicle? So this is a dilemma I always end up facing. I love tires, I love wheels, I love changing tires and wheels on cars and getting the right setup, and it's always something that I struggle with, is to try and make that right choice. And one of the reasons being for that is that when it comes to wheels and tires for your four-wheel drive, it's never a cheap affair. It is always something that costs big bucks, and for good reason. It is one of the most important parts of your vehicle for many reasons, and above all of those is it being the only point of contact between your vehicle and the terrain that you are covering is your tires. And your tires play such an important role on your car for, you know, the comfort they provide, the safety they provide, the ability and performance that they provide. It is such a critical part of your four-wheel drive vehicle, or any vehicle for that matter. So with that in mind, it's always something that should require careful consideration. At the moment on my vehicle, I have a set of 265 75 16 tires, and those are a BF Goodrich, what are they called now? KM3 mud terrain tire, BF Goodrich KM3 mud terrain. And those 265 75 16s are the equivalent of a 32 inch. If you want to get technical, it's a 31.6 inch, but for all intents and purposes, it's a 32 inch tire. And I would almost go as far as saying that is probably the ideal size for most vehicles out there, most four-wheel drive vehicles. But I'll quickly take you outside to my vehicle and just show you what I'm talking about a bit there, and maybe you'll get a better picture of that. So on my vehicle, these 32 inch tires, this is my long wheelbase Pajero 2.8 TDI, that's a Gen 2.5 blister fender Pajero, and they are a little bit, I've got someone biting me here. They are what I would consider a little bit small or undersized for this vehicle, if nothing else, just in terms of aesthetics. So aesthetically on my car, if you look at it from the side profile here, these tires could almost be considered a little bit small or under-tired on the vehicle, at least in my opinion. From a performance perspective, I think that these tires are ideal in terms of the weight that they are, the size that they are. In a way, you could always do with more lift, but they just really work very nicely in terms of feeling, performance, and handling on the vehicle. And with that in mind, it's almost a sin to think of changing them, but also there's that part of all of us that there's an aesthetic that we want to achieve with our vehicles, and that aesthetic, I think, often lends itself to a larger tire, and in many cases a wider tire as well. So with what I've mentioned in mind, the size of my car is working really well for me at the moment, but there's always that part of you that is thinking, what if, and what could be better, and where could I improve? So stepping up in a tire size is something that I've been considering. So it would either be to a 33 inch tire, and that would either be a 285 75 16, which would be a 32.8 inch tire, or a 255 85 16 profile tire. and that would be a 33.1 inch tire, but a narrower one than the previously mentioned variant. Or even going bigger than that and going to a 35 inch tire, which would be a 315/75/16 tire. So with those three options, that is what I'm looking at for the vehicle at the moment. And just to discuss a couple of the pros and cons with you here, so that you might gain some insight into the decisions and why I would be making them. So with that 255/85/16 inch tire, that is a very narrow but tall tire, which in 85-90% of four-wheel driving circumstances would be ideal. So there's a lot of content out there on skinny tall tires versus wider tires. So basically your footprint will be longer, and it's not the width of your tire or that contact patch that is important when four-wheel driving and airing down your tires. It's the length of the footprint that your tire provides that actually gives you the performance and the traction that you need when off-road. So that's why the taller, skinnier tire would be better than a wider tire like that 315/75, the 35 inch, or that 285/75, which would be the 33 inch. So with those wider tires, you can to a degree gain a bit more flotation on soft surfaces like sand. It depends on a couple of variables, but that is one positive that you could gain there. On the road though, you will have a lot more rolling resistance because of the width of that tire, which would then increase your fuel consumption as well as being harder for your car to drive, which would mean more stress on your drivetrain and your driveline, as well as, you know, just that rolling resistance which would require more from your car to get going. So that is a con to keep in mind. Another thing with these different sizes that I'm talking about is the weight, and specifically the unsprung weight that this adds to your car. So this unsprung weight would be weight that is not supported by the shocks and springs and those suspension components. That is outside of that, which then relates to how your suspension works. So it would be slower to react in terms of its rebound and how your suspension compresses and decompresses, and all of those aspects with unsprung weight. Any kilogram added here makes a dramatic change on how your car drives, reacts, and performs. So those bigger tires with, let's say, the 285 and the 315/75/16s, those are going to have some, you know, definitely important factors to consider here in terms of the cons that they will put on the vehicle. The gearing of the car is quite good. It's got 4.9 ratio or 4.9-to-1 ratio diffs, which is quite numerically high but mechanically low gearing, and that works well with larger tires. Although the transfer case is only a 1.925-to-1 ratio, which isn't quite as drastic as some other four-wheel drives, that will be affected but would be easily changed with a set of reduction gears for the transfer case, or also known as crawler gears. But the diff gearing would be good for larger tires, but even so, that's an older car where that 2.8 diesel is not that powerful, so you definitely would feel it on the road. So that's another thing to consider with these tire changes, is the gearing of the car and how that extra percentage increase in the diameter of your tire is going to affect your gearing, which would make your car need to rev higher to achieve certain speeds off-road, and that would then in turn make, you know, doing certain obstacles you'd have to go faster over them, which isn't necessarily a good thing, especially on descents and crawling downhill off-road. That extra rolling diameter of the bigger tires will make it a bit more difficult and challenging for you off-road, even though that diameter will help you over obstacles in terms of the wheel size and tire size and how that rolls over obstacles, those other effects on the gearing could, balance out in terms of what you gain and what you lose. So definitely the gearing of your vehicle and knowing what the diff gearing and the transfer case gearing of your vehicle is very important when choosing this tire size. I kind of am ruling out 35-inch tires at the moment. So with that in mind, looking at the two 33-inch options in tire being the 285 75/16 and the 255 75/16, with those two options, the pros and cons there are the weight of the 255 is a lot better than the 285, so that unsprung mass issue wouldn't be quite as much of an issue, and it is just ever so slightly taller, probably by about 10-15 millimeters, so you do get a slightly taller tire. The only cons there for me is that skinny tire, some people prefer that look, some people are against it. On a big car like my Pajero, I don't know if that skinny look will fit the car as nicely aesthetically, but maybe with the right offset wheels that could look ideal. But that chunkier, wider tire of the 285 I think has a better aesthetic presence than what that 255 does. So with those two in mind, I think from a performance aspect, that 255 is probably a better performer than the 285, but it's somewhat of a rarer tire in terms of where you are able to find them, and they are also aesthetically, I don't think, quite as good looking as the 285s. So between the two, I'm really torn which one I would go for, and maybe you guys can tell me what you are running on your vehicle, or maybe your Pajero specifically, and what your thoughts are on the tire size that you are running. It would also be beneficial if you comment in the comments below regarding that for our other viewers, to get an idea of what you are using on your car, why you are using it, and what it does for your car, either negatively or positively. For most vehicles, I think a 31 or 32-inch tire would be perfect. But when you want to do more challenging obstacles, you want a little more diff clearance and just general clearance on your vehicle, going to these bigger tire sizes is necessary. It's also the only way for you to gain diff clearance on your vehicle is to put bigger tires on. So for some of us, it is necessary to do that. I think if you have 33-inch tires, that will take you 90% of the places that you want to go to. A 33-inch tire or even the 32 inches would be fine for that. When you start going to those really challenging locations and trails, then a 35-inch, a 37-inch, or even up to 40 inches for crazy rock crawling and mud crawling sort of situations, those work. But I think generally between the realm of a 31 and a 35-inch tire is where most of us will find ourselves. So for me, like I said, I'm not sure if I'm going to go with 35-inch tires. I think that could be a bit much. So the choice is a 33-inch tire between the 285 and the 255. So I think that is where I am at the moment, and would love to hear your guys' thoughts on it. I honestly can't tell you right now which one I would go for in the end. It really is up in the air at the moment. I think my car would handle the 285s fine, but I think it would perform better with the 255s. I think with my car in particular, staying with a 16-inch wheel is ideal. A lot of newer cars are either 17 or 18 inches, and older 4x4s are 15 or 16. I think 16 is a very comfortable spot to be, as well as having a good price point in the tire market. 16-inch tires are reasonably well priced, as well as being reasonably available as well. I think one of the key factors and considerations to take away from this video is to really sit down and be honest with yourself. What do you want from your vehicle? What will you be using your vehicle for? And what do you want to achieve with the tire size that you're getting? If you can honestly answer these questions, it will very quickly direct you to the correct and right size of tire to choose for your vehicle. So if you can be critical and honest with yourself with what you want to achieve, this will very quickly help your decision on what tire to choose and what size tire to choose for your car. Some of the pros and positives that a larger diameter tire would bring to the table would be more clearance on your diffs, as well as general clearance on your four-wheel drive, as well as a larger diameter tire being able to roll over obstacles a bit easier than what a smaller tire would. And then a big factor, which I think a lot of people shy away from and often overlook, is the aesthetic factor of what that tire will bring to the table. And lots of people don't like to talk about it, but we love our vehicles, our four-wheel drives, and we love how they look. And often this is an important factor that I think needs to be taken hand in hand with how the tire will perform. So that aesthetic factor of how the tire looks on your vehicle, whether it be tall and skinny or wide or whatever suits your vehicle and your preference best, that is definitely something to keep in mind. I mean, we're going to lie to ourselves if we say, oh no, I'm just looking for performance, I don't care what it looks like. For a lot of us, that aesthetic is very important. Then in terms of the negatives that going to a larger tire could introduce to your vehicle and your rig, the first would be the extra mass and the weight that adds, and it's specifically the unsprung weight. That is something that in turn would also relate to the fuel economy and the rolling resistance that your car would get. It would be a decrease in fuel economy, and it would also in a lot of cases affect the gearing of your car, which depending on how the gearing was to start with, it could make your car worse on road, worse off road, or it might actually also sort out your gearing to put it in a better place depending on how the manufacturer set up your vehicle. So that weight that it will add, the rolling resistance, and the gearing aspect of the size tire that you put in your car, I think those are critical negatives that could affect your vehicle and its performance. Again, another thing that could influence your vehicle negatively is when adding a tire that's much larger than factory. You might need to add a lift kit, you might need to trim bumpers, you might need to add spacers, different wheels and offsets. All of those factors then would increase cost, and modifying your vehicle, and that can be considered as a negative as well as what you would have to pay in order to fit these large tires on your vehicle. So with that in mind and summing everything up, I think those are some of the key points to take away from this conversation. So I think if we boil it all down in a nutshell, I would love to have more of these technical conversations with you guys and open up a forum of discussion where we can talk about these things. And I hope you learn something and maybe glean a bit of an insight that you didn't have before. I mean, I always do my research into these topics and really try to get the most logical and concise answers that I can find. And I just hope that I can impart and share some of that with you guys and also learn from your experiences what works for you and what doesn't. With that being said, thank you very much for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. That would be very much appreciated. Please like and share the video as well if you think other people could benefit from watching it. And until the next one, I hope you guys are enjoying it out there with your four-wheel drives and having fun. Be safe, and we'll see you again soon with more Symmetry four-wheel drive content. Cheers guys.